I want to share with you some thought about tomorrow before I end the day today. And tomorrow, what we could do is to reflect on this journey and identify questions to which we did not get answer, which will be my homework and our collective homework. All of us will have to do homework to either those questions we do not have time to ask, or we didn't really know the answers, whatever way it be. So, please bring with you some questions. Questions which are at the intersection of knowing, feeling and doing, or feeling, knowing and doing, or doing, feeling and knowing, whatever way you put it. The essential dilemma that we are asking is, it is an existentialist dilemma, which was resolved by Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre way back in the 60s in France. It is also a dilemma which the famous revolutionary Aurobindo, when he made a transition to spiritual life, he made this transition. He was always dilemma, because he was a great activist. He was a revolutionary. He made bombs. He would have liked to blow the things apart. And that's why the book Essays on Gita written by him is one of the best commentaries, because he never answers any question. He cannot. But he takes you to the point where you can answer questions yourself. And the best commentary on Gita to my mind is Essays on Gita by Aurobindo Ghosh. So, this is not the first time that we are asking this question. This question has been asked many times and probably will continue to be asked for many, many thousands of years. But the reason why I ask this question to ourselves is that we are on a project of 1,000 years. And for a project of 1,000 years, if we have to trigger change, we have to trigger change now, here, and by ourselves. And that change must lead to institutions which will create mindsets which will create sensitivity to the feeling that mind produces, heart produces, and therefore generate a logic when the hammering takes place to do something about it. Do something about it. No matter how incomplete, I am a great believer in theory of incomplete beginnings. I think the most important thing in life happens when they are incomplete, imperfect beginnings. One of the best source of inertia, one of the guarantee of inertia. अगर कोई काम नहीं करना है ना, तो बोलो जब तक मैं सब कुछ नहीं जानूंगा इसके बारे में तो करूंगा नहीं कुछ. और सब कुछ तो कभी जानोगे नहीं, तो कभी कुछ करोगे नहीं. So practically everything that happened in my life has begun imperfectly. And I'm so proud of it. Because that is the way things happen. We did not know how an app will work. Did we know? Was there any template? We didn't have any template. No country had an organization like that. कहीं था नहीं, किसको देखते हो? कहीं होता ही नहीं ये काम, तो कैसे करते? तो शुरू कर दिए. धीरे धीरे समझ गए. So a lot of things which are of, for want of a better word, catastrophic nature have to be imperfect. And there is a way in which this happens, and I will summarize it. So a lot of things that we have discussed so far will come together now. And I will also share with you the papers. I deliberately did not circulate. I had a tendency, a lot of pressure was there. I also felt, ultimately I decided not to circulate to you any papers. Because once you read papers afterwards, you will find them more interesting or boring as the case may be. And you will also discover that many things that we have discovered in this course in the last 4 days is not there in these papers. And a lot of things are there in the paper which are not relevant. So to demystify my own recorded published knowledge about some of the same framework that I am going to share with you, which you will find interpreted in the class very differently from what is described in the paper. So we all learn in the process. So these are 4 A's: access, assurance, ability, and attitude. And they interact with resources, institutions, Maryadain, resources, sadhan, technology, technique, and culture, Sanskriti. And this is a seed through which we can filter our prognosis and arrive at an understanding which may then lead to some direction in which action can take place. So access, now resources again can be our space, season, sector, and social segments. So, access to resources. Now I will add something which I did not do before. Today it came out very well. Internal resources and external resources. There are resources within. I have memories. There is a beautiful novel set in Polish history, 14th century, by Schumann. And he goes to a cemetery where a lot of graves are there. And while going through the graves, he is reading the epitaph on the grave. जो कब्रें होती हैं, कब्रिस्तान में जाता है और वहाँ पर अलग-अलग कब्र पे अलग-अलग कुछ लिखा हुआ है, उसको पढ़ता है. और कोई कब्र है 100 साल पुरानी, कोई 200 साल, 400 साल, 500 साल. And he is oscillating in the time on the memory scape by looking at the names, their heritage, their culture, their place, whatever. Sometimes people write small messages on the obelisk. So he uses the phrase called as memory scape. Landscape होता है, memory scape. And the point that he's trying to say to my mind is that the internal resources could be in different terrains. There are peaks, there are lows. So I like that point that you mentioned, that I must experience how I come out of the low point, even if I am at the high point, because I must not satisfy with whatever energy level I have to get more energy. So how do you get more energy? Probably, if I understood what Anamika was saying right, is to look at the memory scape and recall the moments when you were either awful, you were indifferent, you were negligent, you were inhuman, you were disgraceful, you were conceited, you were selfish, all the bad things that you can imagine. All the bad things that you can imagine, you were at that time indulging in. And then how do you come out of that? So one of the ways in which you come out of that is by not only looking at external resources but also internal resources. To my mind, it seems now, I am realizing it now more than before, that the lack of internal resources makes people often depressed and devoid of hope than lack of external resources. So when you feel lost, when you feel lonely, when you feel without an anchor, when you feel there is no purpose, then you lose energy. Yesterday or 2 days back she mentioned passion, which leads to purpose. That's an internal resource. It doesn't come from outside. There's a very interesting story about internal resource. What happened? There was a Madari ka tamasha. Madari is a, what do you call it in English? Huh? Not stick charmer. Huh? Well, let us say this was a fellow who was doing acrobatics on the roadside. He had a jamura, a little boy who will climb the rope and walk on the rope, balancing like this with a bamboo. So he was an acrobat. And whatever this fellow will say, if you ask him to climb a pole, he will climb a pole, standing on the ground like this, without knowing, with no fear that he may fall down. So a thief was in the audience. He said, this boy is very clever. Whatever the master says, he can do it without any fear. He'll be a good partner in my stealing expeditions. I need a good partner because sometimes I know that there is a wealth in this house and I can't climb the wall as easily as this fellow can. So after the game was over, he asked him, will you become my partner? I'll give you 50-50. He said, well, that's a great deal. This Malik gives me only a few pittance. He earns all the money. He doesn't give me anything. All right, I'll be a partner. So they went for the first expedition for stealing. चोरी करने के लिए निकले जमुरा और ये चोर. So he asked, चढ़ जाओ इस पेड़ पर, इस दीवार पर. तो वो that Jamura went on, climbed the wall. Then he said, now you jump down. And this fellow will not jump down. He asked him 2-3 times, jump, jump. He said, unless you clap, I cannot jump. ताली बजाओ पहले. He thought the power was not in him. Power was in the clapping, because every time the master used to say, now clap everybody, and then he will do that. And he used to do that. So he thought it was because of clapping that he could do that. An internal resource had been externalized by this little boy who didn't know that it was his power which made it happen, not the claps. But how did he know? He didn't know that. A lot of us are like that child. Let me tell you that. A lot of us are like that child. हम सब ताली का इंतजार करते हैं. है बच्चे? सब हम लोग ताली का इंतजार को ताली बजाएगा तो हम करेंगे. समझ रहे भाई? अगर ताली नहीं बजाएगा तो हम नहीं करेंगे. If nobody appreciates, we will not do it. ऐसा नहीं होता है. So internal resources, when that child discovered after a while that it was his power and not the clap which made him do all that acrobatics, then he became empowered. Till that time he was a small puppet in the hand of the master. And a lot of us are puppets in the hand of our destiny. We don't even realize that we can shape our destiny. So it's very important to realize that access to internal resources and access to external resources, and internal resources, not only the so-called the positive memories, but also the negative memories. Although I must say that negative memories can weaken you sometimes, but there is no harm in being weak. I always say that when we become vulnerable